New York City didn't sleep, but Victoria Kane never listened to it. She lived above the noise, 46 floors high, glass walls, no curtains, where the city became a moving photograph instead of a sound. From here, traffic was light without horns, people were shapes without voices. It suited her. It always had. Victoria had spent her life mastering control.
Control over sound.
Control over silence. Control over herself. That night at the Arclight Hall, she sat at the Steinway wearing black, not because it was dramatic, but because it erased distraction. Her hair was pulled back tight, exposing the sharp line of her jaw and the faint crease between her brows that only appeared when she was thinking 2 movements ahead. The audience didn't clap when she walked out. They waited. Victoria placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes. She didn't play immediately. She claimed the room first. And in the 7th row, notebook pressed uselessly against her thigh, Lucia Reed forgot why she was there. Lucia had covered wars, political scandals, corporate corruption. She had interviewed men who believed they owned countries and women who had survived them. But she had never seen this. Victoria didn't seduce the piano. She commanded it. The opening notes were slow, restrained, like a threat that hadn't decided whether to strike. Lucia felt the vibration before she heard it, deep in her chest, under her ribs. Her breath caught, and she hated herself for it. This was supposed to be a review. Objective.
Detached.
Instead, Lucia found herself watching the muscles in Victoria's forearms, the subtle flex of her wrists, the way her shoulders rolled slightly forward when she leaned into a passage that demanded more pressure, more intent. This woman wasn't performing. She was revealing nothing, and somehow that was worse. By the time the final note dissolved into silence, Lucia realized she hadn't written a single word. Her editor would be furious. Lucia didn't care. Backstage smelled like old wood, metal, and expensive alcohol. Lucia shouldn't have been there. She knew that. But she followed the exit sign like it was a promise. Victoria stood alone in the green room, jacket off, white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled to the elbow. She was wiping her hands with a cloth, methodical, precise, like the music hadn't ended, only shifted form. "Who let you in?" The voice was lower than Lucia expected. Controlled. Not kind. Lucia swallowed, straightened her spine. Lucia Reed. The Atlantic Review. Victoria looked up slowly. Her gaze didn't skim. It assessed. "You're younger than I expected." Lucia met her eyes. Didn't smile. "You're colder than I imagined." A pause. Then, the faintest curve of Victoria's mouth. "Sit," she said. It wasn't a request. Lucia sat. The interview began like it was supposed to. Questions about composition. About influence. About restraint. Victoria answered with precision, short, efficient sentences that gave nothing away. Lucia realized quickly that this woman had been interviewed for decades and had never once revealed herself by accident. Then Victoria leaned back. "You stopped writing." Lucia glanced at the blank page. "I didn't want to miss anything." Victoria's eyes darkened. "Careful," she said quietly. "That's how people confuse admiration with permission." Lucia's pulse spiked. "Which one do you think this is?" The chair scraped softly against the floor. She walked closer, too close, close enough that Lucia could smell citrus and something darker beneath it. "You don't want me," Victoria said. "You want proximity to power." Lucia tilted her chin up. "What if I want the woman who pretends she doesn't need anyone?" Silence fell hard between them. Victoria lifted a hand, stopped just short of touching Lucia's face. A test. Lucia didn't move. Victoria's thumb brushed her jaw once, brief, deliberate, intimate enough to rewrite the air between them. "Leave," Victoria said softly, "before I forget why I don't do this." Lucia stood. At the door, she turned back. "I'm writing the truth," she said. "And the truth is you scare me." Victoria didn't answer. But when the door closed, her hands were shaking. Lucia Reed left the Arclight Hall that night with a single, uncomfortable truth sitting heavy in her chest. She had not interviewed Victoria Kane. She had been seen by her. And that was worse. For 2 days, Lucia tried to write the article. She opened the document, stared at the blinking cursor, closed it again. Every sentence sounded like a lie. How did one describe a woman who didn't perform for an audience, but forced them to orbit her? How did one stay objective when the subject had touched her jaw like a warning, not a flirtation? By the third day, her editor called. "You're late," he said flatly. "You were begging for this assignment." Lucia stared at the city outside her apartment window, the rain streaking the glass like unfinished thoughts. "I need one more sit-down," she said. "A longer one." There was a pause. "She doesn't do second interviews." Lucia closed her eyes.
She will.
Victoria Kane did not answer emails quickly. When she did, they were short, polite, impenetrable. So when Lucia received a message 3 nights later, "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., my studio," she read it 3 times to make sure it was real. The studio was not what Lucia expected. No glass walls. Just space. Concrete floors, tall ceilings, a single grand piano positioned like the center of a ritual. Shelves lined with old vinyl records. Handwritten scores stacked unevenly on a table. A couch that looked slept on, not staged. Victoria stood near the window, jacket discarded, hair loose this time. She looked different. Less armored. "You're early," Victoria said, without turning. Lucia checked her watch. "By 3 minutes." Victoria turned slowly, eyes scanning her like she was deciding whether Lucia belonged here at all.
"Sit," she said again.
Lucia sat, same chair as last time, closer to the piano now. The silence stretched. Victoria poured herself a drink. Didn't offer one. "So," Victoria said, finally, "what do you want that you didn't get the first time?" Lucia swallowed. "The truth." Victoria's mouth curved faintly. "Everyone says that." "I mean yours," Lucia said. "Not the version you give audiences." Victoria moved to the piano bench, sat, rested her hands on the keys without playing. "You're crossing a line." Lucia leaned forward. "I crossed it the moment you touched me." The room went still. Victoria's fingers pressed down. A single note filled the space, low and resonant, vibrating through the floor. "You should be careful," Victoria said quietly. "Wanting answers for me has consequences." Lucia's voice didn't shake. "So, does wanting you close the distance between them? Too close again?" "You don't know what you're asking for," she said. Lucia looked up, heart racing, breath shallow. "I know exactly what I'm asking for." Victoria's hand came up, hovered near Lucia's cheek, then dropped. "No," she said sharply. "This is not happening." Lucia stood too. "You invited me here." "I invited a journalist." "And got a woman," Lucia said. "Who wants you." Victoria turned away. For a long moment, Lucia thought she would be thrown out. Lucia stepped closer. "What if I'd burn it down for you?" That did it. Victoria kissed her. Not gently. Not slow. It was restrained violence. Mouths colliding, breath stolen, hands gripping shoulders like anchors. Lucia gasped into it, fingers curling into Victoria's shirt. The kiss ended as abruptly as it began. Victoria pulled away, chest rising fast. "This stops now," she said. Lucia's lips were swollen, eyes dark. "You don't sound convinced. Leave." Lucia didn't argue. But this time she smiled. She wrote the article that night. It was brilliant and incomplete. She didn't submit it. For weeks, they didn't speak. Victoria played concerts. Lucia attended, always unseen, always watching. Every performance felt charged. Victoria's music sharpened, slowed, grew heavier. She played like she was holding something back. Then one night, after a late show, Lucia felt a hand close around her wrist in the alley behind the club. Victoria's voice was tight. "Are you following me?" Lucia met her gaze. "Are you asking me to stop?" Victoria stared at her. Didn't let go. "Come home with me." It wasn't a request. They didn't speak in the elevator. Or at the door. Victoria's hand was still on Lucia's wrist when the door shut behind them. Then Lucia kissed her, pressed her back against the wall, desperate now, reckless. Victoria responded, harder, fingers sliding into Lucia's hair, pulling her close enough that there was no space left to pretend this was anything but inevitable. They broke apart, breathing hard. "This doesn't mean anything," Victoria said. Lucia smiled. "It means everything." Victoria didn't argue. Victoria Kane had always believed that control was something you either possessed or lost forever. There was no in-between. Yet, as the elevator climbed toward the top floor of her building, Lucia Reed standing inches away from her, breathing the same air, Victoria felt something unfamiliar crack through her discipline. Anticipation. The kind that tightened the chest. The kind that made silence heavy instead of calm. Lucia didn't speak. She didn't fidget. She didn't perform nervousness the way younger lovers usually did. She simply stood there, eyes steady, lips slightly parted, aware, dangerously aware, of exactly what she was doing to the woman beside her. When the elevator doors opened, Victoria stepped out first, not looking back. She trusted Lucia would follow. And she did. The penthouse was dark except for the city lights bleeding through the glass walls. Manhattan glowed below them, distant, indifferent, irrelevant. Victoria tossed her keys onto the counter with more force than necessary and turned around slowly. Lucia stood near the door, jacket still on, hands at her sides. Waiting. "You should leave," Victoria said. Lucia's eyes didn't flicker. "You don't want me to." Victoria crossed the space between them, stopped inches away. "You don't understand what happens when I let people in." Lucia tilted her head slightly. "Then don't let me in," she said quietly. "Just stop standing in my way." That was the moment Victoria realized she was outmatched, not by innocence, but by intention. She reached for Lucia's jacket, sliding it off her shoulders with deliberate slowness, fingers brushing skin as if to test whether this was still real. Lucia inhaled sharply. "Sensitive," she murmured. "Only where it matters," Lucia replied. That earned her a kiss. Not rushed. Not polite. Victoria kissed like a woman who had denied herself something for too long, measured at first, then deeper, mouth opening just enough to claim. Lucia melted into it, hands gripping Victoria's arms, feeling the strength there, the restraint barely holding. When they finally broke apart, Lucia rested her forehead against Victoria's shoulder, breath uneven. "This is a mistake," Victoria said. Lucia smiled against her skin. "So, is pretending we don't want this." Victoria closed her eyes. She hated that Lucia was right. They didn't go to the bedroom immediately. Victoria poured wine this time, 2 glasses, and handed one to Lucia without comment. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, tension stretched tight between them, every movement charged. "You don't belong here," Victoria said after a while. Lucia met her gaze. "Neither do you," she replied. "You just built a life convincing everyone otherwise." Victoria laughed softly, without humor. "You think you know me." "I think," Lucia said, setting the glass down, "that you're lonely, disciplined, brilliant, and terrified of wanting someone who won't stay quiet." Lucia stood, closed the distance, knelt in front of her. The power shift was intentional. "Look at me," Lucia said. Victoria did. Lucia's hands rested on Victoria's knees. Warm, steady. "I won't write about you," Lucia continued. "I won't expose you. I won't ask for promises. But don't lie to me." Victoria's throat tightened. "And what truth do you want?" "That you want me," Lucia said simply. Victoria reached out, fingers curling into Lucia's hair. "I want you," she admitted. "And that makes you dangerous." Lucia smiled. "I can live with that." The bedroom lights stayed off. City glow filtered in, painting skin in silver and shadow. Victoria moved with deliberate precision, every touch intentional, every pause loaded with meaning. Lucia followed her lead at first, then slowly, confidently, began to push back. Hands traced shoulders. Mouths explored necks. Breaths tangled. There was hunger, yes, but also something quieter, heavier. The awareness that this wasn't casual. That this would not end cleanly. Lucia whispered Victoria's name once, soft, reverent. No one ever said her name like that. She pulled Lucia closer, pressing her forehead to Lucia's. You don't get to worship me, she said. Lucia smiled. Too late. Victoria laughed under her breath, then kissed her again. Longer this time, slower, letting herself feel instead of command. When they finally lay tangled together, the city still awake outside, Lucia traced lazy circles on Victoria's arm. You're going to regret this, Lucia said. Victoria stared at the ceiling. Yes, she replied honestly. But not tonight. Lucia shifted closer. That's enough for me. Morning